Welcome to Lyrical Opera Theater's An Insider's Guide, an educational program on Gioachino Rossini's renowned opera, The Barber of Seville. In this program, we will delve into various aspects of this masterpiece, including aspects of opera, the life of Rossini, the characters in the story, the plot of the opera, along with its reception and longevity. What is opera? Opera, akin to a stage play, embodies a dramatic form of theater featuring scenery, props, and costumes. However, in opera, the performers are trained singers who deliver their lines through singing rather than speaking. Accompanying the singers is generally an orchestra providing musical accompaniment. With Lyrical Opera Theater, we use recorded tracks to simulate that orchestral sound. Opera is a multifaceted art form encompassing the human voice, orchestral music, visual arts, drama, and sometimes even dance. The seamless integration of these components results in a breathtaking theatrical spectacle. Operas are structured into scenes and acts, each containing various types of vocal pieces performed by soloists or ensembles. An aria, for instance, is a solo vocal piece typically delving into emotions of a character rather than advancing the plot. On the other hand, a recitative serves as sung dialogue or speech connecting the arias and ensembles while driving the narrative forward and shaping character relationships. The narrative of an opera is conveyed through a libretto, a text that is set to music. Composers craft the score or musical composition for the opera, while some composers may also pen the libretto. It's more common for them to collaborate with a librettist. Historically, the libretto was also printed and sold to the audience. Nowadays, surtitles, providing English translations of the libretto, are often projected onto screens above the stage, enabling the audience to easily follow the plot. Who is Rossini? Gioachino Rossini, a towering figure in the realm of classical music, was renowned not only for his musical genius, but also for his larger-than-life persona. While he composed numerous songs, chamber music, and piano pieces, Rossini's legacy primarily rests on his 39 operas, particularly his comic masterpieces that set new standards in composition. His vivacious personality and insatiable zest for life earned him the admiration and camaraderie of fellow musicians, including luminaries such as Liszt, Chopin, and Paganini. Born in Pesaro, on the Adriatic coast of Italy in 1792, Rossini's early years were infused with a profound admiration for Mozart's music, leading to his endearing nickname, the Little German, among his peers. Growing up immersed in the world of theater, Rossini naturally gravitated towards singing and playing music, staging his first opera in 1810 to resounding success and financial gain. 6 years later, at the age of 24, Rossini would unveil his masterpiece, The Barber of Seville, initially met with lukewarm reception, but later soaring to unparalleled popularity. As his career flourished, Rossini's artistic repertoire expanded, encompassing a wide spectrum of styles and emotions, from frothy comedies to emotionally nuanced works. His final opera, William Tell, premiered in 1829 in Paris. Following the composition of his 39 operas in a span of 19 years, Rossini felt that with William Tell, he had not only reached the pinnacle of his career, but also a natural conclusion, leading to his retirement from operatic composition. At the age of 76, in November 1868, Rossini passed away after an unsuccessful operation for colorectal cancer. His funeral was a grand affair, attended by over 4,000 people. From his playful wit to his profound musical insight, Rossini's contributions to the world of music remain unparalleled, securing his enduring legacy among the pantheon of musical immortals. The Barber of Seville stands not only as one of Rossini's greatest operatic achievements, but also as his least labor-intensive creation. Rossini was commissioned to write 2 operas for a Roman carnival. In order to fulfill his contract, he sought permission to adapt Beaumarchais' The Barber of Seville, a story he deemed perfectly suited for his purpose. He even took the courtesy of seeking approval from Paisiello, who had composed an opera on the same subject with the same title decades earlier. With consent from both parties, Rossini enlisted the writer Sterbini, who happened to be residing in his home at the time, to craft the libretto. In a collaborative frenzy, Rossini hummed melodies while Sterbini translated them into verses, resulting in a harmonious partnership that saw little rest over 13 intense days. The Barber of Seville was ready for the stage just 4 weeks after Rossini began composing. Now, let's meet the characters of the Barber of Seville. First up, we encounter Count Almaviva, the dashing suitor portrayed by a tenor. With his smooth vocals and suave demeanor, Almaviva is the epitome of romance, willing to go to great lengths to win the heart of his beloved Rosina. Also, showing up in disguise as a student, Lindoro, a soldier, and as a music teacher, Don Alonso. As you watch the performance, notice how Almaviva's voice and gestures change with each new disguise. Next, we meet our title character, Figaro, the lovable Barber of Seville, portrayed by a baritone. With his quick wit and boundless energy, Figaro is the ultimate multitasker, juggling his barbering duties with matchmaking schemes and general problem-solving. But did you know Figaro's aria, Largo al Factotum, is one of opera's most recognizable tunes? Going back to childhood, you may remember Bugs Bunny as the Rabbit of Seville, where he gave his nemesis Elmer Fudd a fruity haircut. The aria also appears in cartoons featuring Woody Woodpecker, Porky the Pig, and Tom and Jerry. If you're a film fan, you possibly heard Robin Williams including sections in the lively opening of Mrs. Doubtfire, or saw Walter Matthau using the aria to educate a border guard on the differences between Mozart and Rossini in Hopscotch. And maybe you even witnessed Buck the Weasel's rendition in Ice Age. On the small screen, Seinfeld, The Simpsons, and Family Guy have all used the music in episodes. Singer Mika also confirmed that the tune of his 2007 single, Grace Kelly, was based on Largo al Factotum.
I could be brown, I could be blue, I could be...
Now let's turn our attention to Rosina, the fiery and independent young woman, portrayed by a mezzo-soprano. With her agile voice and spirited demeanor, Rosina is a force to be reckoned with, refusing to be confined by societal expectations. The Barber of Seville premiered with the famous contralto prima donna Geltrude Giorgi Righetti as Rosina. The role was, however, quickly snatched up by enterprising sopranos. Since that time, it has become one of the few in literature to be shared between both high and low voices. The singing lesson in Act 2 has often been turned into a show-stopping cabaret, including a variety of songs depending on the preference of each Rosina. Moving on, we meet Dr. Bartolo, the scheming guardian portrayed by a bass baritone. With his deep voice and nefarious schemes, Bartolo is the perfect foil to our heroes, constantly thwarting their plans with his cunning wit. Dr. Bartolo's character is pulled from the Commedia dell'arte tradition and is a caricature of the archetypal elderly, foolish suitor, adding a comedic element to the opera's plot and highlighting Rossini's talent for blending humor with drama. Next, we have Don Basilio, the conniving music teacher, portrayed by a bass. With his booming voice and sly demeanor, Basilio adds an air of intrigue to the proceedings, weaving his web of deception with skillful precision. Did you know that Don Basilio's aria, La Calunnia, is a showcase of bass baritone vocal prowess with its rapid-fire patter and comedic undertones, making it a favorite among audiences and performers alike? Last but not least, we meet Berta, the observant housekeeper portrayed by a mezzo-soprano. With her keen eye and wry sense of humor, Berta adds a touch of levity to the chaos unfolding around her, providing a much-needed dose of reality amongst the madness. While Berta may not have a starring role in the opera, her character adds depth to the ensemble and offers a glimpse into the daily life within Bartolo's household. In addition are the smaller roles of Ambrogio, Bartolo's servant, along with the notary, constable, musicians, servants, and soldiers. And there you have it, a delightful introduction to the enchanting characters of Rossini's The Barber of Seville, with Figaro's wit, Almaviva's charm, Rosina's spirit, Bartolo's cunning, Basilio's intrigue, and Berta's observations. This operatic adventure promises to be a whimsical delight for all who embark upon it. Let's explore the story of The Barber of Seville. The opera is written in 2 acts, but for pacing and set changes, Lyrical Opera Theater is presenting it in 3 acts. Act 1 begins in the sun-drenched streets of 17th century Seville. A tale of love, deception, and laughter unfolds with all the whimsy and charm of a classic comedy. In a public square outside Bartolo's house, a band of musicians and a poor student named Lindoro are serenading with no avail the window of Rosina. Lindoro, who is really the young Count Almaviva in disguise, hopes to make the beautiful Rosina love him for himself, not his money. Almaviva pays off the musicians, who then depart, leaving him to brood alone. Rosina is the young ward of the grumpy, elderly Bartolo, and she is allowed very little freedom because Bartolo plans to marry her once she is of age and thus appropriate her considerable dowry. Figaro approaches singing Largo al factotum. Since Figaro used to be a servant of the Count asks him for assistance in helping him meet Rosina, offering him money should he be successful. Figaro advises the Count to disguise himself as a drunken soldier ordered to be billeted with Bartolo, so as to gain entrance to the house. For this suggestion, Figaro is richly rewarded. Our Act 2 begins with Rosina, who reflects on the voice that has enchanted her heart and resolves to use her considerable wiles to meet Lindoro. Dr. Bartolo appears with Rosina's music master, Don Basilio, who warns him that Count Almaviva, Rosina's admirer, has been seen in Seville. Dr. Bartolo decides to marry Rosina immediately. Basilio praises slander as the most effective means of getting rid of Almaviva. Figaro overhears the plot, warns Rosina, and promises to deliver a letter from her to Lindoro. Suspicious of Rosina, Dr. Bartolo tries to prove that she has written a letter, but she outwits him at every turn. Dr. Bartolo is angry at her defiance and warns her not to trifle with him. The act's finale begins when Almaviva arrives, disguised as a drunken soldier, and passes Rosina a note, which she manages to hide from Dr. Bartolo. The old man argues that he has exemption from billeting soldiers. Figaro announces that a crowd has gathered in the street and is curious about all the noise coming from inside the house. The civil guard bursts in to arrest the drunken soldier. Count Almaviva reveals his true identity to the captain and is instantly released. Everyone, except Figaro, is amazed by this turn of events, and everyone comments on the crazy events of the morning. Act 3 opens with an exhausted Dr. Bartolo, who suspects that the drunken soldier was a spy planted by Almaviva. The Count returns, this time disguised as Don Alonso, a music teacher and student of Don Basilio. He has come to give Rosina her music lesson in place of Basilio, who, he says, is ill at home. Don Alonso also tells Dr. Bartolo that he is staying at the same inn as Almaviva and has found the letter from Rosina. He offers to tell Rosina that it was given to him by another woman, proving that Lindoro is toying with her on Almaviva's behalf. This convinces Dr. Bartolo that Don Alonso is a true student of Don Basilio, and he allows him to give Rosina her music lesson. Figaro arrives to give Dr. Bartolo his shave and manages to snatch the key that opens the balcony shutters. The shaving is about to begin when Basilio shows up looking perfectly healthy. The Count, Rosina, and Figaro convince Basilio with repeated assurances and a quick bribe that he is sick with scarlet fever. Basilio leaves for home, confused but richer. The shaving begins, sufficiently distracting Dr. Bartolo from hearing Almaviva plotting with Rosina to elope that night. Dr. Bartolo hears the phrase, "my disguise," and furiously realizes that he has been tricked again. Everyone leaves. The maid Berta comments on the crazy household. Basilio is summoned and told to bring a notary so Dr. Bartolo can marry Rosina that very evening. Dr. Bartolo then shows Rosina her letter to Lindoro. Heartbroken and convinced that she has been deceived, she agrees to marry Dr. Bartolo and tells him of the plan to elope with Lindoro. A storm passes. Figaro and the Count enter the house. Rosina is furious until Almaviva reveals his true identity. Basilio arrives with the notary, bribed with a valuable ring and threatened with a couple of bullets in the head. Basilio agrees to be witness to the marriage of Rosina and Almaviva. Dr. Bartolo arrives with soldiers but is too late. Count Almaviva and Rosina are already married, and Dr. Bartolo accepts that he has been beaten. Figaro, Rosina, and the Count celebrate their good fortune with a happy ending. Legend has it that a disastrous dress rehearsal signals fortuitous outcomes. In the case of Rossini's The Barber of Seville, it was the premiere that heralded its astronomical success. Derived from the acclaimed French comedy by Pierre Beaumarchais and the celebrated composition of Giovanni Paisiello, Rossini, a mere 24 years old, embarked on the composition of The Barber of Seville in a mere span of 3 weeks. The night of February 20th, 1816, at the Teatro Argentina in Rome, was marked by an uproar from the fervent followers of Paisiello, who perceived Rossini's production as an imitation. Taunts and jeers echoed throughout the theater, setting an unfortunate tone for the evening's proceedings. As if fate had conspired to test the resilience of the performers further, the opening night was marred by a series of unfortunate incidents. Garcia, the tenor, insisted on accompanying himself in the serenade. In the middle of an elaborate vocal passage, a string on his guitar broke, and the song was interrupted until a new string could be supplied and tuned. Even worse than that, Zenobio Vitarelli, who assumed the role of Don Basilio, tripped on a trapdoor and fell on his nose so hard that he had to finish La Calunnia, a bass solo, with a handkerchief over his face to hide the blood. And to top it off, in the very midst of a splendid finale, a stray cat ran onto the stage and had to be chased back and forth before it was finally driven into the wings. The audience naturally went into a hysteria of laughter, which continued to the close of the performance. Rossini's misguided applause at the end of Act 1 only fueled the audience's frustration, prompting his swift exit from the theater in embarrassment. Not surprisingly, for the opera's second performance, Rossini decided to stay home. But this time, the audience, presumably lacking Paisiello's disruptive fans, was wildly enthusiastic. Afterward, they took to the streets and gathered outside the composer's home to cheer. In retrospect, the bumpy beginnings of the Barber of Seville only served to enhance its legacy. Rossini's masterpiece would go on to become one of the most beloved and enduring operas in the repertoire, a testament to the resilience of artistic vision in the face of adversity. We hope you've enjoyed Lyrical Opera Theater's An Insider's Guide, and hope you will enjoy the opera The Barber of Seville.